Perfect. So once again, welcome. And without any further ado, now I would like to give a chance to our panelists to introduce themselves. And I will just pick the first person on the people in the order that I see them on my screen. So I will start with Soni.
Hi there. I'm Soni Lacefield, and I'm a professor at the Geisel School of Medicine at Dartmouth. And I also happen to have previously been Gabriel's PhD advisor when I was a professor at Indiana University. So I recently moved to Dartmouth, but while I was at Indiana University, I was on the admissions committee for about 10 years. For 8 of those years, I was the chair of the admissions committee. So I've met a lot of people through this process and analyzed a lot of different applications during this time. And so I'm happy to take any questions about how to tailor your application for each university that you're trying to apply to. Gabriel, was there anything else you wanted me to mention?
I think that is fantastic. I think next on my screen, I have Mara.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maralice Conacci-Sorrell. I go by Mara. My lab studies cancer cell behavior, but my second passion is increasing availability of higher education to everyone. I was born and raised in Brazil. My parents didn't go to college, so I had to learn how to find my ways to go to school. And with the things I learned, I have spent perhaps the past 20 years of my life trying to increase access to education to all. And I have served for 4 years in the admissions committee at UT Southwestern, and I have been the chair of the admissions committee for the past 2 years. We review about 2,000 applications per year. We between 80 to 140 students every year to an umbrella program. So I have had the experience both in reading and interviewing many students, and also in seeing what are the elements that make a student successful from the interview to the graduation. We just had our graduation 2 days ago, and it's really interesting and exciting to see what are really the main elements that make a successful PhD student and scientist. So I'm here to help, not only now, but Gabriel can share my email, and I'm available always for anything. So my priority is really students and trainees. Gabriel and I know each other very well. We work on the same floor, and he knows that I'm always available.
Thank you so much, Mara. We'll fill up your your inbox. So next, I guess I'll go with the professors. So let's go with Patrice. Could you please introduce yourself, and thank you again for coming.
Yes, thank you. It's a great opportunity to be here. Good morning, everyone, and good morning to see some of the panelists again, Soni. And so I am Patrice. I am a professor at Indiana University School of Optometry. So it's a small program, and every year we welcome around 8 students, new graduate students, but we have a pool of applicants that can go all the way to 50. So, but again, it's a small program. So about me, I'm originally from Cameroon, and I did my undergraduate there in Cameroon in maths, and then I moved to France to do engineering program there. So, and then after that, I moved to the US in 2012 as a postdoc. So, and then after 5 years postdoc at the University of Rochester, I joined IU as a faculty in 2017. So again, yeah, my background is really in engineering, but I do a lot of work related to biology of the eye. And so that is really, I'm very happy to be here today and try to guide you through the process. I have been a member of the admission committee for the past 5 years. So we always go through all these applications, and there are some applications that always stand out and some that's not, but we're going to go through all of the details about that in a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Patrice. And Jimmy, good to see you.
Hello, everyone. Hi, good to see you, Gabriel. Hello, I hope everyone is doing good. I am Jimmy Uba. I'm a second year PhD student in the Department of Industrial Engineering and Management at Oklahoma State University. I am originally from Nigeria. Fun fact about me, the first time I applied into graduate school, I applied to 3 different schools. I got 0 admission, 0 funding. The second time I applied to 5 different schools, I got 4 different fully funded offers. So I'm going to be giving you some juxtaposing views about a good way to apply and not so good way to apply. Thank you so much.
Perfect. And then Samuel.
Yes, how are we all doing? Yes, so my name is Samuel Amponsah-Effah, and I'm originally from Ghana, but currently I'm in the University of Southern California. And I'm also in an umbrella program, but my interest is geared towards cancer immunology or cancer immunotherapy. One fun thing is that I think during one of my school applications, I was interviewed by Maralice, and if she could recall, for University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. so yeah, so like she's kind of like familiar to me. And coming here to USC, I've had the privilege to be speaking to those that were part of the admission committee. So I have a kind of like an inside information, if I should put it that way. And I'm also happy to share with all of us.
Perfect. Last but not least, our panelist, Frank. I think you are muted, Frank.
Yeah, sorry. I was having some issues with my laptop, so I had to switch to my cell phone.
Oh, no problem.
Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Addae. I am also originally from Ghana, and I'm a first-year PhD student at Harvard University, reading biological sciences in public health. And I'm also a candidate in the therapeutic graduate program at Harvard Medical School. So I've been involved in assisting students to apply to grad school in the US. So I kind of have some experience in some of the things that needed to be or needs to be done, some of the things that needs to be added to your application document and other stuff. So I'm very happy to be sharing with you what I've learned so far, what I've learned from people, my mentees, and then my mentors, that will also help you in your graduate school application this year or the years ahead. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Frank, and all the panelists again for volunteering your time and advice. This has been a very informative webinar for AfrisNet students for many years now, and really happy that we are able to host it again this year. So let's get into it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask a few questions that are directed towards first the professors. And I'll ask a question, and anybody who wants to take a shot at it, please unmute yourself or just go ahead and speak. And we'll go through 3 or 4 questions for the professors, and we do the same thing for the students. That's going to take some time, and then we'll try and open the Q&A for the attendees to also ask their questions. So the first question I have for the professors, some of you have mentioned that you've seen bad and good applications. That means that you've accepted and rejected many applications. So what are some of the things that you see in an application and say, no, reject it right away?
I can start with this one. So for us at Indiana University, we were not part of an umbrella program, which means that we had a specific focus to our graduate program. And oftentimes students would apply to the program, but they wouldn't fit our focus. For example, if they are interested in Alzheimer's disease, but nobody in our program actually worked on Alzheimer's disease, we wouldn't be able to accommodate that person because there wouldn't be a lab where that person could do their research based on their interests. So it's very important to make sure when you're applying to different programs that your research interest fits in with the faculty members who are in that program so that they can envision you in that program and how you will fit into the program.
So I think that's a very profound answer for the students in that, and I hope they really get that, right? Because oftentimes students will be interested in one or two faculty or one or two labs that they hope they would join in a program. And what Soni is really saying is that you actually need to be familiar with all the research laboratories that are in the graduate program that you are trying to apply to. The good thing is you still have time, so have several months before the application, so you have time to learn about all those labs. The second question is...
Maybe I can add something to it.
Absolutely.
So for us, we have an umbrella program. So we take people with various interests, but it's still important to get to know the school and to put in your application that you are interested in the specific area, that you have done your homework, that you have read about the background of the faculty and who you would be interested in working with. But to me, because we have an umbrella program and we can take multiple interests, we have 12 programs to choose from. The single most important thing that really is difficult for me are poor letters of recommendations. There are letters of recommendations that are not strong enough to get the student to feel like, okay, this student will excel. And I noticed from foreigner countries, there is a style of letters of recommendation that's written for American students. And sometimes, because we have about 1,000 applications from foreign countries, now we have come to recognize that sometimes foreign letters of recommendation sound different. They, by nature, sound less complementative than letters that are written in the US. So I think it's important to bring awareness to the people that are writing letters for you about the style of the letter that's expected. For example, a letter of recommendation needs to contain some specific information that will, this student was the top 5% of the students I've ever mentored, or the top 10%. This is very meaningful. Also say, this student distinguished him or herself from others because they have these 3 main features that will make them successful. Things that are specific, objective, and will allow you to compare you to your.
Maralice is a little bit frozen on my end. Is anyone else having the same issue? Okay.
Yeah, the same issue.
Perfect. So Mara,
she is back. Yeah.
You're back, but you're getting frozen temporarily. Maybe we must have lost the last 1 or 2 sentences.
Just make sure that letters of recommendation contain specific information. I think that's really important. And they are detailed, they contain examples. This is a good student. It needs to say, I've known the students for this many years. The student places top % of his or her class. They have formed these things that make them special. So there needs to be content that's very specific and needs to be thoughtful and personalized to that student.
Yeah, so I want to follow up on that. Maybe what Soni said. We also have it's not an umbrella program, so we're really specific. So again, what Soni mentioned is very important that you look what every faculty is doing, and it's always recommended to at least pick 2, because usually there's nothing wrong with your application, it's just the fit. And so you want to make sure that your application fit the interest of 1 or 2 candidates. I will usually say 2 faculty, because what we also concerned about is that is the personal relationship. So you can come in, you pick 1 single faculty that you want to work with, but at the end, it doesn't work well your way, because you don't have the connection. You can't work with that faculty or something like that. You need to be able to redirect you to another faculty who you can work with and complete your PhD studies. So I will always recommend, always reach out and look at the research interest of at least 2 faculty that you think that you can work with and that your research interest match with. And again, coming also from Africa, we say that professor in Africa in general, we are a little bit more conservative. I think what Maha was mentioning is very, very true. When you look at the letters of recommendation, they are not that supportive because, again, the professors are usually very conservative. And we can also see the way we grade in our education system. The grading are very usually conservative compared to here. So it's very difficult with professor there to give a very high ranking, but that is what matters here when you apply to the program here. You want to see that something because it's a competition. You are looking also from application coming from the US, from the other university and from all around the world. So you want to make sure that your letters of recommendation are very supportive.
Well.
I can volunteer to write some guidelines of what needs to be contained in a letter of recommendation. I can write, and Gabriel, you can send to everybody. And then people know these are elements to look for in a letter of recommendation. And then you can send to your recommenders, and then they will do that.
Thank you so much, Mara. That's very helpful. And maybe since you've already offered, once you send that to me, what I'm going to do is to bother Patrice and Soni for their feedback as well. Well, this is a very deep one again, because students don't have full control, right? But instead of, waiting for the faculty or the recommenders to do everything, what I hope is that the students actually now get to hear that they need to be proactive in also getting good recommendation letters. I just want to turn my eye back to the attendees 1 minute and just welcome you again, those who are joining now. I see you, Papa, I see you, Andrew, Bismarck, Donko, and everyone else, those we've chatted. Please connect on LinkedIn if we're not connected yet, Facebook, Twitter. And it's very good to see familiar names. Unfortunately, we made this a webinar, so I can't see your faces today, but I'm just equally happy to see all of you here. I think I'm gonna switch the way I had set up to go and make the next question actually for the students, because I think this recommendation letter issue is very important. And so what I want to do now actually is to ask the PhD students, how did you get your recommendation letters? Did you make any efforts to actually make sure that they were good recommendation letters? Who wrote your letters and what relationship did you have with them?
Okay. I think I'll just go first and then we just move on from there.
Absolutely.
So like I said, the first time I applied, I was doing I remember then I was in my penultimate year. I had not graduated, but I just wanted to apply to get the experience. And so I did my internship, my 6-month internship. And while I was doing my 6-month internship, I saw 2 different leaders or 2 different managers that I had worked with during my 6-month internship. And I told them about my proposal in terms of applying to graduate school. And so both of them wrote reference letters for me. And I reached out to my other a professor in school. I told him about my interest and I'm like, yeah, please, I need your reference letter. And then he just wrote a reference letter and just sent it. That was a bad idea, which I got to know eventually. Because one, I had the opportunity to get an idea of the kind of reference letters that my professor in the university sent. And basically the reference letters had things like, is a good boy, is this, is a good boy. I believe the advisory committee are not looking for is a good boy. Everyone is a good person, right? So I didn't know that. until eventually in later years. And I also felt that the 6 months relationship that I had with my managers wasn't enough for them to give as much detailed information as they would have given that would be relevant for my graduate school application. And so what I did in the other year when I was applying was that I ensured that my recommenders were in academia, because I was applying for PhD, and I know that it would be important for them, for the advisory committee, to actually see recommenders that are actually professors, or at least most of the advisory committee, most of the recommenders should be in the academia line. And so they could give instances that kind of relate to academia. And so what I did was, after I identified recommenders, I sent an email to them. Like, I made like a draft of some of the things that we had done together. And I was like, yeah, so these are some things that we worked together, and these are some things that I feel that would be really strong in a reference letter that you would supposedly send to the graduate school, something like what Mara was talking about. So I listed out some of the things that we did together. I listed out some of the things that they could consider when writing the reference letter. And then I sent it out to every one of them. So it was more like a proactive part in that area, because I needed to ensure that they wrote what was necessary, rather than them just writing "is a good boy" or "I'm a bad boy." And eventually it was good. So that's what I have to say as regards that. Thank you.
Perfect. So that means that you had to know what they needed to put, or what they should have put in that letter, right? So again, emphasizing the idea that this is not a passive process from the student's point of view, right? And I just want to, go ahead. I want the other
I
two
just want
students
to
to
add,
also, go ahead, Frank.
I just want to add something to what Jimmy said. So you could see that Jimmy had established a relationship with the recommenders, right? And that is very important. Most of the times, we, the student, reach out to professors that we don't really have a strong relationship with. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't reach out to them if there is a need to reach out to them for recommendation letters. But then if you reach out to them, establish a connection with them. Let them know who you are. If you took their class, let them know that, okay, I took this particular course that you taught maybe this semester or last year, and I had a good grade in that. And I was very active in class. This is my CV. This is what I've done in the past. And yeah, so give all this information to the person so that the person will know that, okay, this is a person I'm dealing with, even if the person has not really met you in person or does not really know you. Sending out this information is very important. So one of the things I did was that, for me, I was a class president for my cohort. And so I was very active in class. Most of the professors who taught us knew me even before I applied to grad school. So what I did was I sent an email to them that I'll be applying to grad school, and these are the number of schools that I'm thinking of applying to. And this is what I have done over the years throughout my undergraduate studies, and this is my CV. And I would like to have an appointment with them face to face, talk to them about the possibility of they providing me with recommendation letters. And they agreed. So I went there in person, spoke to them, asked for their perspectives on the schools that I'm applying to. And then eventually they agreed to give me the recommendation letters. So it is very important to establish a relationship with the recommenders and let them know what you have done over the past years. That will guide them as to what they need to put into your recommendation letter.
And that very, very, very good point. So again, I guess the more information you provide, the easier it is also for the people to write recommendations for you. I think Mara wants to say something quickly, and then we'll go to Samuel and hear how he got his recommendation letters. Thank you so much, Frank and Judy.
the letters of recommendation, you should do all of that, get to know people, be proactive, but yet you do not have control of it, right? Somebody is going to write a letter for you and you do not have control, but there's something you do have control of, is the relationships you can start building with the school you're interested in working prior to applying. So we pay a lot of attention to students that have contact. They have 3-4 faculty they are interested in working with. They email the faculty, they have a Zoom call, they get to know their research program. That shows commitment and investment. So all those things, when we have an applicant that has contact faculty, put in your application, have been in contact with these 3 faculty, put in your statement, and we will contact the faculty. The faculty will give feedback, even if it's informal feedback. Students that have a relationship with the school, we almost immediately invite for an interview. So this is really important. Showing investment, not only that you're filling the paperwork, but showing investment, prior investment to your application is really important. And you have control of that.
Thank you so much, Mara. That's also very, very important. And like students, are you hearing that? Students who have a prior relationship with the school will almost get invited for interview right away. I'm quoting Mara. Okay, so you're getting a lot of.
Don't bump the application.
Of course, you have to also write a very good applications, but you're getting a lot of tips today, students. And Samuel, how did you get your recommendation letters?
All right, thank you very much. So, like to begin with, I think recommendation letters are arguably one of, if not the most important aspect of the application process, because these letters confirm and even expatiate on the things that you said you did in your SOP and your CV and different essays that you wrote. So like this is how I looked at it. For your SOP and your CV, you are saying what you did. And so there is that possibility to exaggerate even in the slightest form. And so aside publications, recommendations are coming from other people. And so my first strategy was to list those that I believed could give me strong letters of recommendation. And this was by speaking to other people that had received letters of recommendation from, so on and so forth. And I made sure to list about 6 people. Averagely, schools require like 3, some require more and some require less. So I listed about 6. Because I realized that some of them, you speak to them and then they would reject writing you a strong letter of recommendation. Different people may not have the time, or others may say they do not know you well enough to write you a strong letter of recommendation. So I do not want to be in a position where I'll be struggling to find who's the next person that I think will give me a strong letter of recommendation. So I had about 6 names at least that I wanted to reach out to. And to make sure there were strong letters, I made sure to reach out specifically to those that I either worked with firsthand, or they could speak to my research abilities or to my academic achievements. So you realize that even in your SOP, you talk about your research experience and the research that you did. And you did not do the research in isolation. You had a supervisor, you had someone who was like a PI. So I made sure that whatever I described in my SOP as pertaining to my research experience, I had someone who was my PI, who is a research fellow, who is in academia, who could also talk about that aspect, because I did not have any publication to show as evidence of my research that I did. And so to that effect, I made sure these people could help me in that regard. And then I reached out to them, and I must commend what Frank actually said. I made sure to speak to them in person too as well, because sometimes email and then calls might seem different than when you meet them in person. In person, I was able to gauge their enthusiasm in writing letters of recommendation for me, or their willingness, or because, if someone is very eager to write you a strong letter of recommendation, you could decipher from the way the person speaks or the way the person is enthused about writing a letter of recommendation for you. So that was actually another reason why I decided to meet them in person. And out of the 5, actually, out of the 6, I had just 3 people, and that was the number that I really needed. And as the panelists have already mentioned, I provided them with some things that they could consider including, because I did not want to influence what they wrote in the recommendation letter, but then I wanted to give them something to think about, something to consider. So for those that I worked with my research experience, I actually made sure to remind them of the way I handled the project, the things that I did, even some of the questions that I came to them to ask them about, thinking about the project and everything, and what's I think made me stand as unique amongst those that I was even working with. So something that they could even think about. So I provided them with all these, including my CV, my achievements and all that. And they were able to give me strong letters of recommendation. And remember to reach out to them early, not closer to the day that you're writing a letter of recommendation, because these people are very busy. So you don't want to make them write a letter of recommendation that is in a hasty manner. You want to give them ample time for them to think about what to write and for them to even review what they have written before sending. So I reached out to them way earlier, and intermittently, I follow up to remind them as the day is getting closer. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Samuel. And I think, Soni, you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that great advice from Samuel, that it's okay to ask the letter writer if they can write a strong letter for you, because that's the question that you honestly need to know. And I've been asked that, and I have told students, I don't know you well enough to be able to write that strong letter. It may be better if you find someone else to write that letter. And so if you get that information, that can be incredibly valuable. As Jimmy mentioned, making sure that your letters are strong are really important to being able to get into graduate school. And I just want to highlight the timing as well. We're all inundated right at the end, like all of the letters are due at the same time. So for us to be able to write that strong letter for you, we need to be able to start that in advance as well. So we greatly appreciate it when people think about the time aspect for writing the letter.
Wow. So for the students that are being mentored by AfriSnet, some of them we've already connected. We've asked them to start making those relationships already. So by attending this webinar, you will probably be considered for our free grad application mentorship program as well. But I want to also just put it out there that this is the time for you to identify who is going to write a strong recommendation letter for you, and reach out now. Reach out now, put the information out, send them your CV, the updated CV. Let them know which graduate programs you're planning to apply to if you know them already. Make sure they know the deadlines, right? Keep in touch with them, and as also Frank mentioned, make sure that you make that relationship respectful, right? And so by showing up in person if you can, instead of just sending emails and hope that everything is going to happen. So this is clearly a very important topic, and I'm glad that we've been able to give it enough time to talk about it. Once again, I want to thank Mara for offering to write that guide. We will publish it on our website. We will make sure that many people get to hear it. I wish we could have a session with the actual people who write recommendation letters. Who knows, maybe we will reach out to our contacts in Africa and see if that is possible as well. So now I would like to sort of switch topics a little bit. But before that, once again, welcome to people who are joining in now. Again, this is the graduate admission in the US. We have a discussion panel with professors who have served on admission committees, Soni, Maralice, and Patrice, and PhD students, Jimmy, Samuel, Frank, who were mentored by AfriSNet and are now in PhD programs in the United States. So one of the main requirements for admission into graduate school, in particular PhDs, is research experience. And unfortunately, that's also one of the hardest thing for many of the African students here on the call or not to actually be able to get. There's just less opportunities for them on the continent. And those who do get a chance find themselves sometimes engaged in research projects that are not really to the standards of what professors in the US expect. But we do have African students get admitted into PhD programs. I've even heard that some may get admitted without any or extensive research experience. So this question goes to the professors. For a student who is in Africa and they don't have any research experience, are there other things that they could really highlight or that they could do now that they have, several months before the applications are due? What other things could they do now that could help them stand out without extensive research experience? And
Maybe I can. So one thing to understand is that schools sometimes have a quota for international students, right? For example, some schools will admit a lot of international students, other schools will admit fewer. But this quota is for the entire world. So you're going to be competing with students from all over the world, including from countries that have more investment in research. And this has been quite difficult. So that's one of my initiatives here, is to try and parse out and ask what is the progress that the student made within the environment that they have. Because it's pretty difficult to compete sometimes with students coming from China, for example, that have high investment in research. So schools are beginning now to parse out what is the progress of the student, him or herself, in comparison to the environment. And that's really, really important, that you position yourself, comparing yourself to your environment, emphasize what you had access to and how you master things that you had access to in your write-up. That's one important. So there are two types of preparedness for school. One is intellectual and one is technical. So you can really make it clear that while you haven't had access to all those techniques, you're intellectually prepared for it. You have studied, you have invested, you read papers. One way that I found that was really interesting the past 2 years that we had in our application, a review about a topic, and they published a review, and some reviews were incredibly well written and profound, and we could see that the students are really, really intellectually prepared, and the only thing the student is missing the chance of applying all that knowledge. And we have recruited, but that they had intellectual depth in a specific area of research. So that was incredibly helpful to us. So you have the opportunity to work with someone to write a review that's thoughtful, unique, and shows your input and your ability to combine information, I think that would be very helpful. Also, there is no need to hide what you don't know. Sometimes there's great value in saying, this is who I am, what I bring. And I usually find very refreshing reading applications like that. I have had contact with this technology and I mastered it. And I'm ready to come to a new environment and be exposed to new things. I'm eager and ready to grow. So I feel like that kind of transparency, for me, it really works when I read an application.
That's a great comment. Mara. And so I just again want to reiterate here what Mara means by quota means that there is a certain number of spots that every university, every graduate program will dedicate to international students, meaning any other country but the United States. So you are really competing against the whole world. And she also makes a fantastic point that you may not have the research experience, but you have no excuse not to be prepared intellectually, right? And she dropped in some great suggestions on what you can do to be intellectually prepared. I also want to emphasize the idea of making sure you write an honest application. Sometimes we read statements or CVs that are really, really exaggerated and with really highly grandiose languages, things like, I hope that I will be able to change lives in my community when I'm done with graduate school. You can't really do that with a PhD, right? And so focus on yourself and compare yourself to your environment. I think every attendee should write that down. Compare yourself to your environment. Show what you've done that makes you stand out of your environment, not stand out of students from France or Canada or China or the US, your environment, where you are. What have you done with the tools that you have at this very moment, right? And once again, you still have a few months to get ready. So would like to hear from Soni and Patrice as well on this point, because I think it's another very important one.
Yeah, so if I could just start in, I think another important thing that students could do that I'm always impressed with is if they try to learn new skills. So for example, if a student becomes, is limited in resources to be able to do lab work, there's the possibility of being able to learn how to do bioinformatics and how to do computer programming so that they can then learn how to analyze big data sets. And I'm always impressed by the students who take that initiative to start to learn to code or to learn bioinformatics so that they can take advantage of resources that are present on the internet, even if they don't have the ability to perform research in a laboratory environment.
Great.
Yeah, I love that because in the last few years, at least the application that we had last year, there were like a student who really did that kind of side. There were a lot of them who actually took the opportunity to learn new skills, usually programming, machine learning, and things like that, and develop something by themselves. Those students were immediately invited for interview because it's showing that they have internet, they are using the resources that they have available. During the past few years, there were not a lot of opportunity of doing research or lab work and things like that due to COVID. But these students took this opportunity, did not limit themselves. They took the opportunity to use the computer to develop new skills. So I think that was a very important point. And the other thing, going back to not having the research experience, not usually a critic, but if the student took the time, for example, we talk about the connection with faculty that you're interested in working with. If you took the time to maybe read one of their key papers, and it's easy to identify a key paper from this faculty, and then you go through the paper, you read the paper and try to figure out, and usually in the discussion session. In the discussion session, we always have, okay, we accomplished this, but what is the big question? What is missing? What are we having? What are the limitations of the technique that we develop? What are things and so on? So go through that and try to figure out. So if we really show how you're able to connect different and have a lot of information that you want to bring together and how you analyze all of that, and ask the question in your letter, you can say that you can say, okay, I went through this paper about that you published. I'm very interested about this idea. And now you go back to that discussion session where they mention, okay, this is something that we still don't have an understanding of. And so you like to, so you say, yeah, I would like to get involved in that and try to figure out exactly the mechanism behind this and that. So that really shows your interest, that you are able to I don't know how to evaluate a paper, a scientific paper, and to be able to question some of the techniques or the work that was developed, and also your willingness to be able to take that to the next steps, something that has not been solved yet. You're able to, you want to be able to investigate that.
Yeah, so great points. I mean, for the students, again, I think this should make you feel better, actually, because what these professors are saying is that there are ways to increase your chances of getting admitted. And again, keep in mind, these are people who have actually read hundreds of applications, and there is a chance to increase, there is a possibility to increase your chances of admission, even if you don't have research experience, right? And so maximize the tools that you have now, show the drive, show the motivation. But I guess what I'm also hearing from these comments is that when you describe what you've done, you need to be specific, right? So like Patrice mentioned, I have read this paper. This is what we often read in the application documents that we see. When the language is not too grandiose, it's also too generic and superficial. And so I'm interested in this professor's research in immunology. And that's all they say about a professor that you're trying to work with for, 5 or 6 years as a PhD student, right? And so you need to get deeper than that. You all have access to literature. If you do not know how to get to literature, please reach out to us. We will be very happy to help you. We'll be very happy to guide you. So I believe, yes, Mara.
Just want to say something because I think it's important for you to know there are things that are not under your control or our control. For example, some years we could recruit 60 students. Like last year, we were able to recruit only 60 students. That's what the budget we have. This year, we're able to recruit 140 students. So there are things that change in the landscape. And I would not, if you get rejected one year, it does not mean that you would not be accepted the next year. You learn from the process. So just be aware that things change. And for example, our school may fluctuate a lot in the number of students that we have permission from the president's office to recruit. And that change is extremely important to foreigner students because there's only a quota. If our quota is 20-30% of the students that can be from outside the US, if we're recruiting 60 or if we're recruiting 140, there is a huge difference. So keep in mind that if you don't accept it, don't get it in 1 year, learn from the process and try again. I'm one person that was rejected from everything I tried for the first time. Every step in my career, and you know what? You'll learn from the process and the landscape changes as well. So just keep that in mind and learn from it. The other thing I want to say, have other people read your application. Do not send your appliation cold turkey. Make sure other people that have applied for graduate school, that have read applications, read your application to make sure that it sounds like, sometimes we just don't have experience. How should an application read like? Make sure other people read it. You have great resource with Gabriel and this group, and make sure you take advantage of it because it makes a difference.
Okay, students, that's very important. So rejection is not the end of your life, right? A professor who is now tenured at UT Southwestern Medical Center, one of the premier medical centers in the world, has been rejected when they applied to graduate school. And she is candid enough to admit, she's very generous to admit that in front of you. And we've seen students who want to tear themselves apart when they don't get any admission, or want to turn everything around and change everything they've written. And what you are learning now is that some things are out of your control, right? So
let me add to that, Gabriel.
definitely.
Now, if I see an applicant multiple years in a row, I'm actually impressed by how much that applicant has the desire to be able to go to graduate school and try again. So someone like Jimmy, I think, will be hugely successful in graduate school because he really wanted and has the desire to make and drive to make sure that he gets in and will finish graduate school.
Excellent.
I think it's also important to show the progress, what the progress you made during between the 2 years, what progress you made to better your application. I think it's better you point that into your application.
Yeah.
That this is what I did, this is what I did from the application previous year to this application. So here they show how interested and how motivated you are to get into the program.
And I think that means to these two last points that if you're planning to go back and apply again, you need that feedback, right? If you don't know what could have gone wrong, you need that feedback from people who have applied. Again, we are here to help and give you our opinions, keeping in mind that some things will be completely out of your control. So Frank, I think there is something that is as a background noise in your environment. Let's try that and see. Perfect. You can unmute yourself when you're going to speak. I think I was hearing some background noise. Thank you so much. So now, for the interest of time and to make sure that we give time to the students to actually ask their questions that we may not have even thought about, I have one more for the students, and I'll ask them to really take 1 or 2 minutes for their answers, and then we'll open the floor to the students. If we have time afterwards, we can come back and continue to the discussion. But, you know, for you, the students, you're now looking at this retrospectively. You've done it. It was successful. But when you look back, is there something that you feel like, you know, I really, when they interviewed me, I feel like I wasn't ready on that, in that area, right? You know, is there something you would remove or change in your application? Are there any you know, areas of or components of your application that you feel like, yes, it was successful, but if I could do it again, I would change and do it this way instead?
Or anything that you maybe think that made your application unique.
There we go. I'll start with you, Jimmy. You're first on my screen.
Okay. Yeah. On my part, I think one thing that I felt made my application unique was the resilience on my part, because I had first year, I did all of this application, I got nothing. And the other year, I took some time to think about what I did wrong. And I also ensured so I could get some research experience. I reached out to my advisor, my undergraduate advisor. I asked him if I could, you know, get my hands dirty in the research field. And he was giving me a lot of projects and I was doing continuously. So I feel that even if we don't have all of the materials or sophistication or the equipment to do research, if you take the initiative to reach out to your current undergraduate advisor and inquire if you can get your hands dirty in the research line, it would by all means give you that privilege for you to do all of those things. And so that was what I did. And apart from doing that, I was doing I was taking some courses in Python and R and doing all of those things. And as compared to the previous year, I felt that my CV and my SOP were more bulky, you know, because I took some time to get my hands dirty. And that's what I would advise anyone. who is interested, you have about 5 more months to go before you start applying. Get your hands steady and do not restrict yourself to the curriculum of your undergraduate program. And definitely you would see the reward, right? And that's what I have to say about that.
That's an excellent point, JB. So even if you don't have the tools, right, or the cutting edge microscopes or the most recent PCR machines and what have you, you can look around and still get familiar with the process of research, right? And I guess what Jimmy is saying also indirectly is that it doesn't matter whether you publish or not, right? What matters is that you get into the process somehow, and do an exercise that you can objectively describe for your graduate school application. Frank? Oh,
Can you hear me?
Now, yes, now I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was saying that one of the things that made my application very unique, I think, was the fact that, so I was interested in the field, and most of the professors that I was interested in were working or were in the Ivy League schools. So Harvard, Columbia, and then Stanford and other high-ranked schools. And I knew that applying to these schools from Africa directly with just an undergraduate degree was going to be very difficult to get in, especially having no publication. And so what I did was that I tried to attend conferences and then present my undergraduate research work. And that was very important. I made use of the COVID. Is it the COVID brought together or made most conferences hybrid? So you could attend either in person or virtually. So I took that opportunity and I applied to a number of international conferences, and I got the opportunity to present my work in these conferences. So I believe that also added a lot of weight to my application document. Because I remember when I received my invite from Harvard, the professor who called me made mention of one of the conferences that I attended. It was like, oh, I heard or I read that you attended this conference, MPM, and I was one of the organizers. So what I did was to reach out to the other organizers to see whether to confirm whether you indeed participated and you did a poster presentation. And they confirmed that, yes, you did a poster presentation. So right from there, I knew that that conference that I attended and did a poster presentation was a major factor in
Frank, your audio is breaking up again, sorry. Okay. We'll give Frank a chance to maybe figure out what's wrong with his audio. Let's hear from Samuel for now. But I think we got most of what Frank was saying, and that was actually a very excellent point, because I can say for sure that there are a few students that we know have gotten admitted because they had participated in international conferences. And sometimes you may even be able to participate physically. Some of these conferences have funds to give you travel awards and help you attend them wherever they are in the world. So if you are working on an undergraduate project now, look out for conferences. The summer is coming. That's usually a time for conferences, and they are happening throughout the year. So ask your advisor, ask professors in your university where they go to present their research, which conferences they attend, and try your chances. So Samuel, real quick, and then we will open the floor to the attendees.
All right, and thank you very much. So one thing I realized that people or those that are applying to schools really miss is that they put themselves in the box that to apply for graduate school is all about research experience. I realized from the get-go that to be a researcher, it is a holistic thing. It is not only your research experience. You should gain skills in your writing, your presentation too as well, and different skills. So what my strategy was to prepare myself in all these areas. So apart from my research experience that I sought to gain, I made sure that I took some courses in research writing, and also took courses on how to present papers. And I had evidence or certificate to show for that, and also try to write a review of a paper too as well. And also gain other skills, as has already been mentioned, in bioinformatics in R, to show that you are a holistic candidate, because I knew I was going to compete with a lot of people who were bringing in various skills, various backgrounds. So if my research experience is not even strong enough, there could be other aspects of my application process that is going to kind of help me, or the committee is going to look and see, okay, this student have had different experiences, so he might be good to apply for this program. And I was glad when Frank mentioned about the conferences as well. It's very, very important, because as a scientist or as a researcher, there will be times that you'd have to go to conferences and present. So I also took part in the conference. The conference was actually for only PhD students, but at that time I wasn't a PhD student, but I still applied to that conference, and unfortunately I gained admission to that conference. It was a 1-week conference and symposium on the African continent. But one thing I want to just include is that if there's one thing I would have worked well with my application process, would be how to tell my story. A lot of Africans have the research experience. They have the skills, but how to present it, how to tell, both in their SOPs and also in the interviews. I realized that fortunately I had so many interviews, but I had fewer admission. I had like more than one admission. But then I realized that I could have gained more admission if I could have told my story well, in a coherent manner during the interview. So that's something that they should think about as you are going through your research experience. Know how to tell the story to anyone who would ask, whether in your SOP or during the interview.
Great points, Jimmy, Samuel, and Frank. Thank you so much. And I just want to underline that you cannot tell a good story if you do not know your audience. You have a chance now to not just know who your audience is, but you've actually heard from people who would be your audience if you apply to graduate school by interacting with the professors on the panel today. And so I also want to mention that once again, if you are lucky to get into our mentorship program, we will actually have a mock interview with you before you go for the real interview, if you make it that far. Some people in the chat have asked how to reach out to AfriSnet if they need help. I will put our email in the Q&A, but also if on the flyer, there is a link to join AfriSnet, and as you are registering, there is a specific question that asks you if you are applying to graduate school and if you need help. If your answer to the question is yes, then we will follow up and see where you stand now. And yeah, just to remind everybody, this is also becoming more and more a merit-based mentorship program, because we've had students who just want to join, but they are not really prepared, right? And that ends up wasting the time of many mentors who are volunteering to help. Now, I want to start the Q&A from the audience. I wish I could give the professors a minute or two to speak about the interviews, but I worry that we may not have time to hear from the audience, and some of them have already started to type their questions. But I believe Moses had already mentioned ahead of time that he wanted to speak. So let me find Moses. Moses, I hope you are still here, and I have allowed you to speak.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, Moses.
Hi, Gabriel. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to ask a quick question, and before that, I want to appreciate the professors as well as the students. Quite impressive, and I've learned a lot so far. I have two quick questions, and this is something that the panel has already touched about. And the first one is the intellectual preparedness. And this, I look at it in students who want to shift their research area. Exactly, not totally shift. I mean, don't want to move from physics to biology, but just a little bit. But then there's always that aspect, how deep should I be prepared if I want to switch my area of interest? And the second question is research experience, academic preparedness play a vital role in graduate school application. But we also have the extracurricular activities like leadership and these other soft skills. How balancing, or how would you advise someone to balance either during the interview or during writing the SOP? How do you balance those two areas to be wholesomely prepared?
Let's take two answers for this question, for these two questions, please. Anybody on the panel, jump in.
I think it's a great time to switch when you're applying to graduate school, to make that leap into kind of a different field, even if it's kind of in the same range of biomedical or biological research, because I think professors kind of expect that. They don't expect that you know exactly what you're going to be doing research on for the rest of your life. So now's the time to make that switch. And so to do so, you want to make sure you understand the new field that you're interested in, and have read either reviews or papers, especially journal articles would be really helpful, especially from the professors at that university, and be able to make comments in your SOP and when you contact the professors ahead of time about why you're interested in that field. And then the second point, if someone else wants to jump in, can do so.
I was just gonna say that it is a good time to change, and the research experience is not necessarily that you have to be married to that research experience you had, but the experience is important to let you and us know that you like this lifestyle, right? You need to have been exposed to science to know that you like it, that you're committed to it, and that you're savvy enough on the bench to pick up new things. So nobody expects you by no means to be committed to the same field of, well, should be within reason, right? But to the same field or to the same research topic that you started with. Do not worry about that at all. And if you prove that you have made progress in one area and you want to move to another topic, this is perfectly fine. And this is what we kind of expect and appreciate.
Great. I also want to make sure we don't miss the people who are typing in the chat, in the Q&A section. Somebody asked if the GRE is still important. I can answer this one. If a program says explicitly on their website that they don't require it, don't take it if you are applying only to programs that say explicitly that it is not required. If a program says that GRE is optional, be careful there. And I recently had a meeting with graduate recruiters to ask this very specific question because it was getting confusing to me as well. What does optional mean? And the reality is that if it's optional, it will be considered if that's the only thing that's going to distinguish you from another applicant. And so you can always reach out to the graduate programs and ask specifically if it's not required at all or if it's optional. And then people writing to professors and they are not getting answers. This is a big one. Or for this one, I'm gonna say, you know, let's take one professor, right? Somebody, what emails do you respond to? Which ones do you ignore? That's a big one too.
I will ignore the ones that are cookie cutter, and then you could send to another 3,000 people. If people want to contact me, I will always answer an email that was addressed to me, and it was written as it was addressed to me, that people took the trouble and they have a specific question or a specific topic that they believe I can help them with, or we can address together. If the letter is very generic, and many letters have even addressed to the wrong people, they will send you a letter and it's not even your name in the heading. So those generic letters that do not address you specifically, I feel like if the person is interested in talking to me, they should take the trouble to know who they're talking to. And I don't mean an extensive way, but I think, and you should only take the trouble to write to the people that you are interested in talking to, that you believe will add to your application, your future career. So I think this is really important. Writing 300 emails is useless. Write to the people you care about. Write to the people that you share interests with. It's not that we will not answer in a punitive way. It's just that if there's no shared reason for that interaction, we receive too many of those.
You hit the nail on the head there, Mara. Thank you so much. Jimmy, you have a comment?
Yes, I just want to add to what Mara just said. So I think one thing I always advise individuals that reach out to professors is ensure that in the email it's more personalized, right? For me, what I did then when I was applying was that I would either check out the research that is ongoing in the professor's lab and integrate a statement or a paragraph on that research, that, oh, I enjoy what you're currently doing in this particular area. And sometimes I could check out a paper that the professor just published, and I'm like, yeah, I enjoyed reading your paper specifically in this area, and I feel that it resonated with my interest in XYZ area. So making it more personalized would make them want to reach out to you. So
yeah, great points. So yeah, avoid generic emails, right? And Patrice said that you need to show in your applications that you've actually read the professor's papers. And now what Jimmy is saying is that even in your emails, before you send out those emails, make sure you've read some papers from that lab, right? You know, the only thing you can do as an aspiring scholar is read and read and read again. You can't read too much as a scholar. A researcher is a reader. You have to read, right, and show that you've read, right. I just also want to say to the panelists that the attendees really appreciate the session. Some people are saying that all the questions they had about application to grad school have been answered this morning. So thank you so much. Mara, 30 seconds.
Yeah, quickly. This is truly a scientific community. So it's really important that you begin establishing your community. Reach out to people that you really want to connect with. This should be a genuine connection. I know we're talking about for the purpose of getting admitted to grad school, but from now on, you're building your community, you're building your people. Those are the people that are going to support you throughout your entire career. You may not notice this now, but those connections are truly important, and it's critical that they are genuine.
And somebody, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I was saying that don't be discouraged. Sometimes you send an email, but you have to make sure, again, as Jimmy and other people mentioned, it has to be personalized so that you have more chance to get the response. But even if you don't have the response the first time, follow up, because sometimes you just send an email at the wrong time when somebody is very busy, and we receive so many emails, so sometimes we just fall off our list of things to do, but follow up.
Yeah. Frank? Oh no.
Oh, my network is not good. Is it better now?
Now I hear you. Somehow it's getting cut though.
Okay, so I wanted to add to what Mara said. There's a time that you need to build your community. You realize that most of the time when students reach out, he turned out not to even continue with the conversation. But this is a point that you have to, continue with that conversation. Even if you get rejected by the professor, stay connected to the professor. Because I remember
Oh no.
external.
Frank, we've lost you again. Maybe take a minute to chat and then I'll read your answer.
I think Frank's making an important
But
point.
it's a very important point too, right? Persistence, I guess, is what you're getting at. And I've heard some professors tell me that if a student hasn't actually emailed a few times, sometimes they won't respond. I've also heard some students who have gone as far as picking a phone and calling the office number if the professor does not respond. I mean, the chance that a professor is going to be in the office and answer, I don't know, but that's a very important point that Frank is raising. Unfortunately, we can't hear him well. Go ahead.
Can you still hear me or you still can't hear me? Maybe I can turn off.
Let's see. Go ahead.
Okay, so persistence is very important, but then I was not talking about persistence. I was talking about continued conversation with the professor who rejected. That is very important. You see, when you get rejected by a professor, that does not mean that is the end of your conversation with that person. Thank the professor and then let him or her know that you still need their mentorship. Even if they are not interested in you joining their program or their lab, you still need their mentorship. And then
Okay, we've lost you again, Frank. Very unfortunate, because I think you're saying really, really important things. Anyways, we can follow up, and unfortunately, I don't think time is our best ally at this point. We're getting really close to the end. There are a few questions in the chat that have already been answered, so I'm not going to come back to those. Somebody did ask if I'm only being supervised by students, fellow students, can they write recommendation letters for me? I think I will say the answer is no.
I recommend that they write in conjunction. They can write the letter and have the professor sign the letter with them. So that on the letter, it's in the appropriate letterhead from the university, which I think we haven't mentioned yet, but it's really important for us to be able to see that appropriate letterhead to know that it came from an academic institution, and ask the graduate student to write the letter, but have the professor of the graduate student or mentor of the graduate student sign that letter with the graduate student.
Perfect. I'm going to put our email. We're running out of time, so I'll put AFISNet's email in the chat, and it should have gone to everyone at this point. We have time for one question, and that is gonna go in order that it was received. So Hyacinthe, you can speak now. And then for the people who have their hands raised, or if you feel like your question has not been answered, please send it to the email that I just put in the chat. I will try to get your questions to the professors if I feel like they were not answered. And then we'll have your email address that way, and hopefully they will also respond and give you their thoughts, either the professors or the students who are on the panel. All right, Hyacinthe, you have 30 seconds.
Yes. Yeah, good evening. Yeah, sorry. And now time we are evening. Yeah. Yeah, my name is Hyacinthe. I'm from Rwanda. Currently, I'm studying in India. So first of all, I want to appreciate your on the panel or your discussion with some kind of interesting and impressing, even though some of our questions have been already answered. That's why I'm not having a lot of questions. So first, I want to dedicate my question to Maralice. I think her story is somehow particular aligning with mine, how she struggled to get into our graduate program, struggled to get funding to reach out to her destination with her effort, without the parent support and something else. So it's something aligning with mine, how I passed from Rwanda to India in my undergraduate for scholarship. It's some kind of aligning. So I got impressed by her story during the first introduction she made. So I want to ask my question to Mark, how you handle this kind of underrating the potential of undergraduates. For example, at the end of my second year, I paid for one internship in Swiss, I think. So they rejected me. And then I asked for the feedback for my application. They said like, my CV looked to be somewhat exaggerating. I asked in which aspect? They said, you said at least you made one research work and then you submitted your manuscript to the reviewer and then it's in progress of review. They said it's not understandable how undergraduate within second year you can get research work. I said, but I have proof. I have regarding proof. I've already met. It's already accepted. I'm waiting for final approval. And then they said, okay, we can review your application, something like that. They said, okay, we are sorry for this. You have proof. We are sorry, we are not going to accept it as already the decision has been made. So I want to ask, once you come to the context of graduate school, how you handle this issue of underrating the potential of some undergraduate students based on their CV, on their accomplishment and something like that. And another question I want to ask for Maralice.
Sorry, Hyacinthe. I think for the interest of time, we're gonna cut you to one question. And as I mentioned, please email the second one. I think you already have our email.
I have.
Let's see what Mara says about the first the question.
I hope I understood your question. How do we handle the process and the changes in the process, and what makes a decision? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I'm looking like how you handle this issue of underrating the potential of undergraduates.
Yeah, so I think Mara, the problem he had is that he had some qualifications on his CV, and then the people who were reviewing it for the offer thought that he didn't have those qualifications. They thought that he was somehow exaggerating his qualifications. It may be a cultural issue.
You keep in mind that you're being there is a pool of applicants, right? And at least the way we do it, we have 50 members in 50 voting members in our admissions committee. Everybody scores the student, and those scores are computed, and then we put those are the scores that will lead to an offer. These are scores that are going to lead to a wait list, and these are the scores that are lead to reject. So for our program, everything is numbers based, and there are many people that are scoring all applicants. So, and all applicants are in a way being compared to each other. So that pool, it's possible that it's not that you didn't have the credentials, but it's possible that in comparison to the pool, if there were a small number of positions to be filled, in comparison to that pool, you probably didn't score as well as the other candidates that got an offer. That would be my explanation for what could have happened. I don't know what Soni would think of that.
Soni, say something about that, a few seconds.
I think it's just hard. It's hard to know. I think you unfortunately, it sounds like a very unfair situation that happened to you. I think the struggle that we have on the application committee is trying to figure out the impact of everybody's research. And I'm sorry that happened to you, but I hope that in the future, maybe you can highlight how much work you put into making sure this happened and what exactly you did to make sure that to have been able to submit that research.
Yes. Those are good points, and Hyacinthe, I think what probably happening here is that the people who are reviewing your applications were probably also not best positioned to do so, or they were not doing it in the right way, and that can happen too. You know, Mara mentioned that this is a scientific community, and that community is made by people with humans with all their flaws and problems. So it's good to also keep that in mind. What I would say there, I would point you back to a point that was made earlier by the students, that you have to make sure that your documents are coherent. In other words, if you put something in your CV shows it. I mean, your CV tells it, but in your statement, you have to show it. You have to really show how you got there, how you did it, and most importantly, what that means for whatever pro offer that you are trying to apply for. When you're applying to grad school, you are not telling, you are showing with specific examples that will convince the readers. Before I take the last comment from Samuel, I want to mention a comment that Frank was trying to mention, is that even if a professor rejects your email or tells you that I guess they won't be able to take you in the lab, stay in touch if you can, because you are building a network with them. Right, and that echoes Maralice's point that as you are reaching out to these professors, keep in mind that you are also expanding your network, right? And as you're building your network, you have to learn not to take people's time for granted as well, right? And so you have to be mindful and respectful of those connections. So I would like to take the comment from Samuel and then Patrice, and then we will close. There's many questions. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them. There is more than 80 people who have showed up throughout the webinar. So unfortunately, we can't take all the questions, but again, you have the email, shoot the questions to us and we'll try and get to them. Samuel, please.
All right, and thank you very much. So based on the question that was asked like just now, that is why I always try to advocate that if you have engaged in any research experience of any kind, at least try to get someone who could speak to that research as one of like your recommenders. Because like the situation was that he actually had an experience that the committee finds a little fishy. They couldn't really like fathom whether that is true or not. So this is a situation that usually happens when people are like reviewing like essays, SOPs, CVs, and whatnot. And so if you have a recommender who worked with you on that research like project, or even who was part of those who wrote the paper and is also a professor, that person could be one of your recommenders that could add credibility to whatever you are saying on your CV or your SOP, because you have not reached that like status of that credibility yet, but these professors have a sort of like credibility. So if they speak to the same things that you placed on your essays, your CV, it makes it better, in my opinion. Now, the second thing I realized from the questions that were being asked in the chat is that a lot of people do not take time to really research on the school that they want to attend and the program that they want to get into. And you know that most of these sites have eligibility requirements, GPA, what's not, whether you are supposed to write like the TOEFL, whether you're supposed to have this, whether you're supposed to have or not have that. I actually got most of my answers like from the website and some info sessions that I asked like to be had with me, because I realized that every school and every research program that I was applying to is unique, and they may not necessarily be the same. So even if I have a mentor telling me some list of things that I could include, I would make sure to authenticate that either through the website and also asking for info sessions so that they could give me their perspective, because they are going to review like your application, your mentor is not going to review it. So the people that are going to review, the people that are part of the committee, I think you should, that is why reaching out to them is very important. Reaching out to them helps you get a sense of the things that you need to include and what's not. So please, let's take our due diligence, do our homework, and know this before we even start with our writing of our SOP and everything we need to do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, those are really excellent points, Samuel. And so for the attendees, there's so many questions, and it's clear that you all want to get into grad school. Before I go to Patrice, I want to address two quick questions. Number one, if you are applying to a PhD program, in most programs in the US, you don't need a scholarship. Those programs are fully funded in most cases. That's the case here at UT Southwestern Medical Center. That's the case at Indiana, where Patrice is. That's the case at Dartmouth College and Indiana University, and also where Frank and Jimmy and Samuel are. And then I think somebody asked if they need approval from a professor to get admission. No, you do not. As Mara mentioned, it's good to show that you have a relationship, that you're in touch with professors. And they all reminded you that these professors are very busy, and you might have to be a bit more persistent and insisting. And so now let's hear from Patrice.
Yeah, just for my last note, I will say we talk about a lot of things today. So do your homework and apply everything that we discussed. But always remember that a lot of things that are out of your control. Don't focus your energy on things that you cannot control. Okay, focus on what you can control to make your application stand out. But don't waste your energy on things that you cannot control. Things happen, there are a lot of things moving parts, and just move on. So that's my last word.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very informative. I just want to tell the attendees that this is an yearly event at AfriSNet. And, you know, we will try and I think all the panelists were amazing. So let's first give them a big round of applause wherever you are. We've gotten really good feedback in the Q&A. Everyone is saying they've learned a lot. Again, if you have outstanding questions, please email them to us. I will relay them to the panelists. And I promise I will do my best to bag these panelists to come again next year. And so anybody on the call or on the webinar here, if you do not follow AfriSNet on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, please do so. If you didn't sign up for our mailing list, there is going to be no way for us to reach out to you, but you can follow us on social media and you will still be in the loop. Because people were on and off during the webinar because of the internet issues, we will post this the recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. So again, if you have not subscribed to that channel, please do so. As you see our events that are posted on social media, recordings on YouTube, I really encourage you to share on your own social media pages. That's how we get the word out. And it's great that technology is allowing us to do that. You may share something that's going to make the difference for a fellow African student getting into grad school, right? I guess I'll ask the panelists, can you see the screen that I'm sharing? Yes, I also wanted to invite everyone to this webinar. AfriSNet has launched a new program. It's called Global Research Webinars. And you know, if you are a grad student or a student here in the United States, typically people go to webinars on a regular basis, like every week. And they get to hear from really outstanding researchers from basically all over the world who come and present their research. And we know that if you're in Africa, you may not have that same opportunity where you get to hear from people like Leslie, who is really an outstanding globally renowned researcher in neurogenetics and behavior. I think we may soon even get a positive response from a Nobel laureate. I won't tell you who that is, but stay posted, right? So we are going to try and get really outstanding researchers, including the panelists that you saw today, maybe also participate and present their research to all of you. So again, look out on our social media pages, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. This flyer has been posted. It's a PDF, so you should be able to directly click on this link here and register. Once you've registered, just like today, you're going to receive the webinar link within 24 hours prior to the meeting. I highly encourage that you register as early as possible, please, because if you register within the last 10 minutes, the chances we may not have the opportunity to send you that link before the webinar. So be on the lookout for these webinars. This is our inaugural one on May 31st at 10:30 a.m. GMT. Calculate your corresponding time wherever you are. Another exciting thing is that we are broadcasting to people literally all over the world. And so without taking too much more time, I want to thank the panelists again for really, really excellent points. I think it's obvious why this is the most popular webinar at AfriSNet. But again, to me, what matters the most is not the popularity. What matters to me is to see that the students are really learning a lot. And we've heard testimonials before that attending this discussion panel has been really the difference maker for the students to get admitted into graduate school. So sharing your time and advice is a really, really far-reaching effort endeavor. And for that, myself and AfriSNet are very grateful for your time. I also want to thank the attendees for sticking with us today. I know many of you are fighting against unstable internet connections, and you've tried to come back in as you drop off, and that's a challenge. We hear you. Thank you for tuning in. And again, we'll have this recorded webinar available on YouTube for you to watch afterwards if you missed any points. Sorry again for the questions that were not answered. Shoot an email. We'll be sure to get them to the panelists. And if you haven't registered for AfriSNet also, please join our network, stay in the loop. Again, if you attended today, you will receive an email most likely early June or later this month when we launch the mentorship program. It's going to be a merit-based program. We will have to vet your qualifications and make sure that you are ready to apply for grad school, and then we will assign you with an individual mentor who will guide you through the process. On that note, again, I don't know how I can thank everybody for joining today, but I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope that your answer will be yes again next year when we call you for this event. I'm going to stop the recording now.